the podium is a gentleman who is about as close to a brother as you can ask. I was honored to be asked by him to help him on his campaign for the 6th District of U.S. Congress. Now, unfortunately, I didn't do my job well enough because he's here and not up there. But hopefully in 2014, maybe we can tee it up and get it on again. So try to talk him into it. That's one of the subject. You may know him from the radio if you're from this area. He's been on the radio since 1983. He started as a wee young chap, just mere 13, I think. But he's been on the radio here. A lot of people know him. Like I said, I consider him a brother and somebody I will do anything to help. And I feel very honored for him to have taken his time out to come and talk to you and be in charge of this forum. I present to you Bill Flynn.
Thank you. We're going to do a couple of things today, and I'm going to have a presentation in just a few minutes about the United States Constitution, Declaration of Independence, and some underpinnings. I'm going to call it the fundamentals that all of us kind of need to know about. And some of the things may make you a little bit uncomfortable, so be ready for that. But to start this presentation, we're thrilled to have with us a representative of the North Carolina Institute for Constitutional Law. Not long ago, I had one of his office mates on the radio with me. Jeanette joined me. And by the way, Jeanette, who works with the man I'm going to introduce, is actually cleared. Her name is Jeanette Doran. She's cleared to argue in front of the United States Supreme Court, which is kind of cool. So Tyler is surrounded by some high-credentialed types, and what he's going to bring today is all about the North Carolina Constitution. I'm sure he'll mention again, but I'm real excited to say that Tyler was kind enough to bring us all copies of the North Carolina Constitution. So if you don't have one, you can leave the room and keep one with you. And you will be shocked, if you've not looked at it, some of the things that are in there. Tyler Yonts is a graduate of the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill and Campbell University School of Law. After receiving his bachelor's degree in political science, I like that. How about that for a change? Political science from UNC Chapel Hill. Tyler spent a legislative session working as an intern in the North Carolina State Senate. And following this work in the state government, Tyler attended the Campbell University School of Law, where he earned a 2-book award for the highest class grade for the First Amendment law and state and local government law. I think that's worthy of a round of applause right there. We have a winner. Congratulations on that, Tyler. Since becoming admitted to the North Carolina bar, Tyler has worked on a variety of matters, including First Amendment claims, economic liberty, among other issues. He currently serves as a staff attorney for the NCICL. You'll hear more about that too. Tyler lives in Apex with his wife, Megan, and I want you to give him a really big, warm welcome. Tyler Yonts.
Well, I'm excited to be here, and I'm actually from Randolph County originally, so not too far from here. And I'm a fairly young lawyer. I've been at the Institute just under a year. And but just to tell you a little bit about us, we are a 501c3 nonprofit. We're sort of a think tank on one hand and a law firm on the other. And our mission is to educate the public and the bar and legislators on the Constitution. And we litigate when appropriate. We've handled issues dealing with charter school funding, with the state superintendent of public instruction, the power struggle between she and the governor's appointee a while back. We handled that case. We've litigated corporate giveaways, economic incentives cases. So that's a little bit about what we do. one thing I'll say about the North Carolina Constitution, and really, yeah, sure. We get all our funding from private sources. We don't take any government funding of any sort, anything like that. We get, I actually don't know our size of our donor base, but one of our major contributors is Art Pope, who is now the governor's budget director. So we're sort of a sister organization to John Locke Foundation, Carolina Journal, Civitas, and things like that. So, sure, and by the way, if you have a question, just raise your hand or speak up, and I'll be glad to take any questions you might have. But one thing I will say about the Constitution, and any Constitution, is I look at it like rules of a game. And you really don't want rules of a game changing while you're playing the game. And, I think one of the problems we've had over the years is that sometimes legislators don't care about the rules, and sometimes judges don't either. But I think that's why it's important that we all, know about the rules, at least to some extent. Now, not everyone's an expert, and I wouldn't even consider myself expert, but we just need to have a good understanding of our rights and the limits that are placed on government. So the first thing I want to do is read this quote that I came across recently. And the reason I think that the Constitution is important, especially the state constitution, is what you see on the screen, and I'll just read it. The best guarantee of North Carolinians' basic rights must ever be what it has always been. Not only a balanced institutional arrangement of government subject to wise restraints, enforced when necessary by fearless judges, but also, above all, a thoughtful and informed citizenry, conscious of its constitutional history and zealous to preserve the best for posterity. So, that's what I think this is all about. And, some of you may actually know quite a bit about the state constitution, and some of you may not. If some of this is refresher, then I ask you to bear with me. If it's not, then I hope it's at least interesting as we go through a few of these aspects of the state constitution. The first thing is, obviously probably all of you know about federalism, which is dual sovereignty. Sure.
Copy of your notes online?
I can provide one probably on our website. Yeah, sure. Federalism is dual sovereignty. So the states have one sphere of power, and the federal government is supposed to have one set of power. Now, as many of you know, that's kind of the balance has been tipped in recent years. And that's actually not even a recent phenomenon. That goes back years and decades. But that's the way that the system is designed. Each state has its own constitution. I was talking with someone not too long ago, and they didn't realize that states had constitutions. So, yeah, I know it's amazing, but that's why. I don't know what their deal was, but they didn't know that states have constitutions. There are similarities, a lot of similarities between our state constitution and the federal constitution, and also among the states. And I think partly that's because it's a good system, at least in theory, and as long as it's not corrupted, it's a good system. Where you've got separation of powers, and you've got checks and balances, and things of that nature. And then some of the differences are, you may know this, the level of detail. So the federal constitution is a very short document. It's only a few thousand words long. The North Carolina Constitution is about 17,000 words long, and I just found this yesterday, the Alabama Constitution is 340,000 words long. So the reason for that is, the way it's set up is states are supposed to have more power than the federal government. I know that's a big surprise to a lot of people, and that's why they're more detailed, is because they're involved in more aspects of our lives than the federal government is supposed to be. And the federal government is supposed to be one of enumerated powers, and the states are supposed to be ones of broad plenary power. So that's just a few of the aspects of the Constitution. And now, the history of the North Carolina Constitution. We've had 3 constitutions in the state. Our first one was in 1776, then 1868, which was post-Civil War, and then most recently was in 1971. There have been changes. It's sort of been an evolution. The governor originally was very weak because we were fearful of a strong governor, a strong executive, from our days as a colonial, a colony. And then, you know, the right to vote has been expanded over the years. But then there's also been consistencies, which is a lot of the Declaration of Rights have been carried over through each successive constitution. So those are just a few of the things to keep in mind. You know, some of those: free speech, free press, freedom of religion, things of that nature. So I'm just going to go through the 3 constitutions, 1 slide per each, and you know, we can take questions and things like that. But first, the 1776 Constitution. John Adams was a big influence on that, sending correspondence and also sending other state constitutions down to North Carolina while we were deciding what kind of constitution we were going to have. It's interesting that the Declaration of Rights, which you can think of that as the Bill of Rights, it's the state version of the Bill of Rights. The Declaration of Rights was actually passed before the Constitution in North Carolina, a day before, and then the next day when the Constitution was passed, it incorporated the Declaration of Rights into it. So they were 2 separate documents, but they together formed the state constitution. Originally, there were property requirements for both voting and holding office, which is very interesting. There were, for voting for senator, state senator, you had to own 50 acres of land. To vote for state house, or the House of Commons at that time, you had to be a taxpayer. To hold office, you had to hold office in the Senate, you had to own 300 acres, and to hold office in the House, 100 acres. And to hold the office of governor, you had to own the equivalent of 1,000 pounds worth of land. But also in this Constitution, one of the big carryovers from colonial days was the law of the land provision in our state constitution. It's still there today. It basically says that your property and your life can't be taken from you except by the law of the land. This is basically due process. We don't rule ourselves by fiat, and so that's rooted in the Magna Carta. So it's got a long history. And then toward the bottom of the slide, it's a little bit cut off there. A couple of the characteristics were a weak governor and a strong legislature. The governor was actually appointed by the legislature at that time, and he was also, most decisions he made would have to be done in conjunction with the Council of State, which are the other executive officers, and they were appointed by the legislature. He also had no veto power. So he was a very weak governor. And I don't know, does anyone actually know when the governor of North Carolina got veto power? I don't know.
Yeah, recently.
71, 92?
I think it's 92, Jim Hunt, right?
Any?
It's Hunt, 96, somewhere in that 90s, mid-late 90s.
Yeah, 96.
Yeah.
1996, that's correct. So it was a long time before the governor gained that power, which is most governors, I think, if not all, have at this time.